The night smelled of rain and something darker, something old. Amanda had walked this path 100 times before, but tonight, the shadows felt heavier, the silence more watchful. Then she saw it. A small bundle, carefully placed in the middle of the alley as if waiting for her. Her heart clenched. Instinct told her to walk away. But curiosity, that dangerous little whisper in her mind, made her step forward. The moment she reached for it, the wind howled through the empty street, and the shadows shifted. Something was watching. And she had just made a terrible mistake. In the village of Tangle, there lived a woman named Amanda. She was as poor as the dusty ground beneath her feet. Her clothes were mere rags, full of holes and tears, barely covering her frail body. Her home was nothing more than a crumbling shelter, the roof leaked whenever the sky wept, and the cold wind howled through the torn windows as if mocking her misfortune. Amanda had no bed, she curled up on the hard, bare floor every night, like a hungry cat seeking warmth. Each evening, she whispered desperate prayers for a better life, but each morning greeted her with the same relentless struggle. She did everything she could to survive. She fetched water for the villagers, washed their clothes, and even worked on their farms. Yet, no matter how hard she toiled, her hands always came back empty. It felt as if the world had turned its back on her. The women she had grown up with were now married, living in comfort with their families. They adorned themselves in fine clothes, their children's laughter ringing through the air. But Amanda had no husband, no child, no one to call her own. The villagers whispered behind her back. "She's cursed," they murmured. "Born with bad luck." Even the men avoided her, fearing her misfortune would rub off on them. Amanda's life was a tale of sorrow. She walked through the village like a shadow, unnoticed, unloved, unwanted. Yet, despite everything, she carried on, holding on to the fragile hope that one day, the sun would shine brighter upon her life. But that day had not come. Not yet. One scorching afternoon, Amanda carried her bundle of tattered clothes to the river. The sun blazed fiercely overhead, and the water sparkled like molten silver. She knelt by the bank, scrubbing her rags with hands as rough as the village roads. The sound of rushing water was her only solace. As she washed, she heard the soft rustle of footsteps behind her. Her heart skipped like a frightened bird. Turning quickly, she saw a woman standing tall and proud. The stranger was dressed in the finest garment Amanda had ever seen, her jewelry glistening under the sun, her skin glowing with an almost unnatural radiance. "Good day," the woman greeted, her voice as smooth as honey. Amanda blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "Good day, ma," she replied hesitantly. The woman stepped closer, her sharp smile never faltering. "My name is Eo. I've been watching you, Amanda. I know your struggles." Amanda's eyes widened. How did this stranger know her name? Eo seemed to read her thoughts and smiled. "I have a business proposition for you. Simple work that will change your life." Amanda's mind spun. What kind of business? Eo reached into her bag and pulled out a bundle of crisp banknotes. "You will collect used panties from the villagers. Bring as many as you can. For every sack, I will pay you handsomely." Amanda's jaw dropped. "Panties," she echoed, confusion thick in her voice. "Yes," Eo said firmly. "Don't ask questions. Just do as I say, and you will never know poverty again." With that, she handed Amanda the money and turned to leave. "I will be waiting." Amanda sat by the river, clutching the money, her mind clouded with questions. What kind of business was this? Why panties? She didn't understand, but the weight of the money in her hands was undeniable. For the first time in her life, hope stirred in her chest. She packed her clothes and headed home, her heart pounding. What should she do next? The next morning, Amanda devised a plan. She knew the villagers might grow suspicious if she asked for only panties, so she decided to make her trade appear ordinary. With the money Ao had given her, she went to the market and bought colorful buckets and bowls, big and small, each one shining under the morning sun. When she returned to the village, she knocked on the first door. An old woman answered, eyeing her warily. "Good morning, Mama," Amanda greeted, holding up a bright blue bucket. "I am exchanging this for any old clothes, shoes, or even panties you no longer need." The old woman frowned. Old clothes, shoes, panties. She shook her head. "What kind of business is this?" "It's a new venture," Amanda replied smoothly. "If you have anything unused, I will trade you for this fine bucket." The woman's eyes lit up at the sight of the bucket. Without hesitation, she went inside and returned with a pile of old garments, topped with a few worn-out panties. Amanda smiled. "Thank you, Mama. Here is your bucket." House after house, it was the same. The villagers eagerly exchanged their discarded belongings for Amanda's shining goods. By the end of the day, her sack was full, bulging with clothes, shoes, and, most importantly, panties. That night, Amanda sat in her hut, carefully sorting through her collection. She placed the panties in a separate sack and took the rest of the clothes and shoes to a hidden spot near the river, where she burned them under the cover of darkness. The flames crackled, consuming the evidence, while Amanda watched, her face glowing in the firelight. The next day, she delivered the sack to Ao by the river. "You've done well," Ao praised, her voice smooth as silk. She handed Amanda a thick bundle of money. Amanda's heart raced as she clutched the payment. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling hope bloom within her. Ao's sharp eyes gleamed. "Keep walking, Amanda. Your life is about to change." And so, Amanda's trade continued. Each day, she grew wealthier, while the villagers remained clueless about the dark secret hidden beneath her newfound success. But secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, have a way of unraveling. And soon, a watchful eye would turn its gaze upon her, setting in motion a chain of events that will shake the village of Tango to its core. "Have you seen Amanda's new bowls?" one woman asked her neighbor. "Yes. I traded my husband's old shirts yesterday and got one." "It's beautiful," the neighbor replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Whenever Amanda arrived in the village with her buckets, a crowd would gather instantly. Women pushed and shoved, each trying to hand over their old items first. Amanda never lacked customers, and by the end of the day, her sacks were always full. With Ao's payments coming in regularly, Amanda's life began to change. She repaired her leaky hut, replacing the torn roof with sturdy palm leaves. Her windows were covered, keeping the cold winds out at night. She even bought new clothes, bright and colorful, like the women she once envied. For the first time, Amanda could eat well. No more begging or struggling. Her days of hunger were over. The villagers noticed her transformation and began to talk. "Look at Amanda," they whispered. "She's no longer the poor wretch we knew." "Maybe her business is truly blessed," another added. But while her days were filled with laughter and trade, her nights held a darker secret. When the village slept, Amanda would quietly gather her sacks of sorted panties. Like a shadow, she slipped through the narrow paths, heading toward the river. Under the moonlight, she would meet Ao, who always waited with her strange, knowing smile. They exchanged no more than a few words, but each time, Eo would take the sack of panties and hand Amanda her payment. No one in the village knew of these nightly meetings. To them, Amanda's success was a simple tale of hard work. But in the dark by the river, something strange and unspoken was happening. And soon, it would catch the attention of a watchful eye. Amanda's trade grew bigger than anyone in Tango could have imagined. She didn't stop at her village. Soon, she started visiting neighboring villages, her buckets and bowls gleaming like the morning sun. Everywhere she went, villagers eagerly gathered their old clothes, shoes, and panties, waiting for her next visit. "Amanda is coming tomorrow," they would say, excitement bubbling like a pot of soup. Everyone wanted a piece of her trade. Back in Tango, her life was a marvel. Her once broken down hut now stood strong and proud. Her clothes were fresh, and her meals were satisfying. But while most villagers celebrated her success, one person's mind was restless, her neighbor, Amma. Amma had always been sharp-eyed, and she couldn't ignore the strange pattern. Every night, while others slept, Amanda would carry her sacks and disappear into the darkness, only to return hours later, her face calm but her eyes telling a different story. Where does she go? Amma wondered. One night, curiosity gripped her tightly. Wrapping herself in a thick shawl, she waited by her window, watching. As expected, Amanda left her hut, a heavy sack slung over her shoulder, moving like a silent cat. Amma followed, keeping a safe distance. The air was cold, and the night eerily quiet. Amma's heart pounded loudly in her chest, but she pressed on, hiding behind trees and bushes. Finally, they reached the river. Amma crouched low, peeking through the tall grass. Her eyes widened. A figure sat on a large rock by the riverbank. It was Eo. Her rich clothes glowed faintly under the moonlight. Around her, candles flickered, their flames dancing in a perfect circle. Amanda approached and dropped her sack in front of Eo. Without a word, Eo opened the sack, pulling out only the panties. The rest of the clothes were pushed aside. Then, she began to chant. Her voice was low and rhythmic, like the hum of bees, and the air around her seemed to thicken. Amma's breath caught in her throat as she washed. Eo raised her hands, and suddenly, the panties vanished into thin air, leaving behind a faint, eerie glow. A strange laughter echoed through the night, sending chills down Amma's spine. Her legs trembled. Her heart pounded like a drum. She wanted to run, but her feet felt stuck in the mud. What had she just witnessed? Who was this Eo? And what was she doing with the villagers' panties? Fear gripped Amma as she quietly retreated, her mind racing. She had seen enough for one night. But she knew this was just the beginning of a terrifying truth. Amma's heart raced like a trapped bird as she stumbled back through the dark forest. The eerie laughter from the river still echoed in her ears, and every rustle of leaves felt like a hand reaching for her. Clutching her shawl tightly, she moved as fast as she could, but fear made her legs feel like stone. She didn't stop until she reached her hut. Slamming the door shut, she bolted it and pressed her back against the wood, breathing heavily. The shadows in her room seemed to stretch and move, and the silence was deafening. Amma sat in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, eyes darting around. Sleep refused to come. Her mind replayed the scene by the river, the candles, the chants, the disappearing panties, and Eo's haunting laughter. She hugged herself tighter, whispering prayers under her breath, begging for the night to end. At first light, Amma could no longer bear it. Throwing on her wrapper, she rushed out, heading straight to the elder's house. Her bare feet slapped against the dirt paths, stirring dust as she ran. When she arrived, the elders were just waking up, their faces lined with sleep and age. But the panic in Omar's eyes erased their weariness. "What is it, Omar?" one elder asked, his voice heavy with concern. "It's Amanda," Omar cried, her words stumbling over each other. "She goes to the river every night. There's a woman, she's doing something dark with our clothes. I saw it with my own eyes." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. "What did you see?" another elder asked, leaning forward. Omar took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "There were candles." Ao was chanting. "She took only the panties, and then they vanished. After that, there was laughter. Evil laughter." The elders sat in silence, their faces growing more serious with each word. Finally, one of them rose. "This is a grave matter. We must summon Amanda at once." The village bell was rung, its sharp clang waking everyone. Men, women, and children gathered quickly in the square, murmuring among themselves. "What's happening?" they asked, their voices filled with confusion. When Amanda arrived, her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed her. The elders stood before the crowd, their expressions grim. "Amanda," the head elder began, "your neighbor Omar has brought a troubling report. She says she followed you to the river last night and saw things that concern the safety of this village. We demand an explanation." The crowd fell silent. All eyes were on Amanda. The air was thick with tension. Even the smallest breeze seemed to carry whispers of fear. Amanda stood in the center of the village square, her legs shaking like leaves in the wind. The villagers' eyes bore into her, their faces a mix of fear and anger. She swallowed hard, but her throat felt as dry as the harmattan wind. "Amanda," the head elder said again, his voice sharp. "Speak. What are you hiding?" Amanda looked down, hands clenched tightly. I can't," she whispered. "I took an oath. If I speak, I will run mad or die." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers rose like a swarm of bees. "An oath," the head elder frowned. "What kind of oath?" The head elder frowned and turned to one of the younger men. "Bring the chief priest," he ordered. The villagers waited in tense silence until the chief priest arrived, his long staff tapping against the ground with each step. His sharp, knowing eyes scanned the crowd before settling on Amanda. "You have taken an oath," the priest said, his deep, commanding voice echoing through the square. Amanda nodded, tears streaming down her face. The priest raised his staff and began to chant, his voice rising and falling like waves on a river. A heavy stillness settled over the square, and the villagers watched in awe as the priest's words seemed to wrap around Amanda like an invisible rope. Finally, he stopped, pointing his staff at her. "Now speak," he said. "The spirit will protect you." Amanda fell to her knees, her body trembling. "It's Ao," she sobbed. "She is no ordinary woman. She is a ritualist. She forced me to collect your panties to steal your lives." The villagers gasped in horror. "Our lives," someone shouted. Amanda nodded, her tears falling freely. "She promised to make me rich if I helped her. Each time I brought her panties, she performed rituals, using them to take your strength, your fortune, your very souls, to grow her wealth." The villagers stared in stunned silence, their faces pale. "I had no choice," Amanda cried. "She said if I refused to obey, she would kill me. I was desperate. I'm sorry." The head elder's face hardened. He turned to the chief priest. "What can we do?" The priest stroked his beard thoughtfully. "We must find Ao and destroy her power. Only then can we break her hold on the village." A mix of fear and anger erupted from the crowd. The once celebrated trade of buckets and bowls had turned into a dark tale of deceit and danger. Now, they understood the true cost of their old, discarded clothes. The chief priest stood tall, planting his staff firmly in the ground. His sharp eyes swept over the gathered villagers. The square was so silent that even the rustling leaves seemed afraid to make a sound. "This is no ordinary matter," the priest declared. "A powerful witch hides among us, feeding on your lives through Eo's work. But fear not, the spirits have spoken, and they will guide us in breaking this curse." The villagers shifted nervously. Some clutched their children, others murmured prayers under their breath. "Now," the priest continued, "if you have ever given your panties to Amanda, step forward. The curse cannot be lifted if you hide." For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, women began stepping forward, their faces pale with fear. One by one, they stood before the priest, heads bowed in shame and terror. "Me too," whispered an elderly woman as she joined the line. "I gave 3 pairs," admitted a young mother, clutching her baby tightly. More women followed, until nearly half the village stood before the priest. The men watched in stunned silence, their faces reflecting a mix of anger and fear. The priest raised his staff and drew a circle in the dirt around the gathered women. He began to chant, his voice deep and rhythmic, each word carrying the weight of ancient power. The air grew heavy, and the villagers felt a strange pull, as if the very ground beneath them was alive. The ceremonial torches flickered wildly, and a cool wind swept through the square, though the night was warm. As the chanting intensified, the women inside the circle began to sway, their eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, the priest's voice rose sharply, and the circle of dirt around them lit up with an eerie glow. "The curse is broken," the priest declared, "but it will not fully lift until Eo's power is destroyed." The villagers murmured in awe, but their fear remained. The battle was not yet over. Eo, the witch behind it all, still lurked in the shadows, her dark power threatening them all. The priest, now armed with the full power of the spirits, closed his eyes and raised his staff high. His chants grew deeper, his words sharp like a hunter's blade. The air thickened, and a sudden gust of wind swept through the village square, lifting dust and leaves. "She is close," the priest declared. "Her lair lies near the river, hidden beneath the old baobab tree." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The baobab tree, a place children were warned to avoid, rumored to be cursed, now revealed its sinister truth. "We must end this now," the priest said. "Her power weakens, but she is still dangerous." Led by the priest, the villagers grabbed sticks, stones, and torches, their faces set in grim determination as they marched toward the river. When they reached the baobab tree, the priest pointed his staff at the ground. "Here," he said. "Her coven lies below." The strongest men began to dig. Before long, they uncovered a hidden entrance at a small, dark tunnel leading underground. The air around it was thick and foul, reeking of decay and magic. "Bring her out," the priest commanded. 2 brave men entered the tunnel, their torches lighting the way. Moments later, they emerged, dragging a struggling figure behind them. It was Eo. Her once glorious robes were tattered, her face twisted in rage and fear. "You fools," she spat, her voice like the hiss of a snake. "You dare defy me? You will all perish." The villagers recoiled, but the priest stepped forward, unfazed. He began chanting again, his staff glowing with a soft light. Eo screamed, clutching her head as if the words burned her. One by one, the villagers stormed her lair, smashing the charms, candles, and strange artifacts scattered inside. With each item destroyed, Eo weakened further. Her screams grew fainter. Finally, the priest raised his staff. "It is done," he declared. "She is powerless." The villagers dragged Eo back to the square, tying her to the old tree in the center, the same tree that once bore witness to their joyous celebrations. Now, it would witness her end. "You have stolen from us," the head elder said, his voice heavy with anger. "You have cursed our people. Today, your reign of terror ends." Without hesitation, the villagers picked up stones, their fear and rage fueling their actions. The air filled with the sound of rocks striking wood and flesh. Eo's screams echoed briefly before fading into silence. When it was over, the villagers stood in solemn silence. The witch who had brought them so much pain was no more. The air felt lighter, the square brighter, as if even the spirits were relieved. The chief priest raised his hands. "The village is free," he declared. "But let this be a lesson: evil thrives where greed and secrecy grow. We must remain vigilant." And so, the tale of the woman who traded panties for riches became a legend, passed down through generations, ensuring that Tango would never forget the cost of misplaced trust. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like, comment on what you learned from the tale, and don't forget to subscribe for more enchanting tales just like this one. Thank you.